Right, hello and welcome to a quick DAGI run through. So there's a few things still to change in here, but I'll take you through some of the key elements that you'll be looking at over the next period. And when you get your play account, which should be coming up shortly, you can have a play around and just try and break it. So what I'm going to jump into first is the move a mob function. So under move stock, move a mob. This is essentially your bread and butter. This is what you'll be doing on an almost daily basis, and you'll be moving mobs as you shift your stock. So here we've only got one mob. What you see is when you go in there, all the paddocks, you have the mob that you've chosen at the top. So in this case, U2 2019, and initially all these colours will be greyed out, or they won't really show anything because you'll be sitting in a neutral zone, but they'll quickly colour up as you add your movements over time. And so every time you make your movements, down the left hand side you'll have either larval challenge at a paddock level or worm burden at the mob level, and the resistance risk of both of those groups. So which is essentially how much drench exposure they've had to those worms. When you go to move a paddock, you'll see that the paddocks are all listed in order of time since grazed. So we've got, say, Repo 5 has been grazed 63 days ago. There will also be a search function as well, so you'll be able to quickly scroll through if you've got, say, 400 paddocks. When you go to move them into a paddock, this alert won't be there, but basically there's two key things that you need to supply here. The first is your entry cover based on the kgs of dry matter on your sword stick. So let's say that's 1500 here. And then down the bottom where we've got low, moderate or high, that's around feed quality. So if it's just normal grass, probably keep it at moderate, but if you're thinking, this is great lamb finishing tucker, it's going to be high. And if you're thinking this is brown top or really gone to seed, it's going to be low. So we'll keep it at moderate. In the middle, you don't need to really worry unless you're giving supplementary feeding. So if you are feeding out in an emergency, say like a drought situation, you tick there. If you're feeding out during winter, you tap yes there. Then press done, and that mob has now been moved. That's basically all you need to know. So then if we go to actions, this is where the rest of the magic happens really. So over time there'll be things like you can add a new mob, so we might have purchased its birth if we're creating it from lambs. We can remove a mob, edit a mob. The move a mob tab is also available there. Merge a mob when you especially if you've got, say, two U mobs or two Hoggett mobs that you join together. We'll go through a bit more of those in detail later. But the other, probably two key ones down the bottom here is update fecal ear count, which will be a really important part, especially as we're calibrating in the early stages. This is pretty straightforward, so let's say it's a 400 eggs per gram. We took that yesterday, and that is now updated, that mobs count. The other one is a drenching a mob. So when you go to drench a mob, there's a few things. We need to select what type. So in this case, let's say we're using an oral triple. In the background, we've saved the drench efficacy for this triple as 92%. And let's say we leave 1 in 10 undrenched. So let's say it's going to be 90. So we'll select a date, which was, say, on this Saturday. And that is done. We've updated that drench, and that should be active. So the only other thing in here is around drench efficacy. So we discussed this in the chat the other day, but one of the key things is we really want to understand how that drench is performing on your farm. If a triple is only killing 75% of the worms, then we really need to know that. So that's where your 10-day drench checks are really important, and I'd really encourage you to work out a plan with your vet to make sure they happen. So that's the key ones in the mob, so moving them on a daily basis, updating mob numbers and stuff as that changes, and then fecal egg counts and drenching. They're really the key ones. We'll talk about some of the other ones at a later date. When we go to paddocks, so this is the other one over here, the key things that we're looking for in a paddock is going to be cropping and silage. So if we say, let's look at Repo 7, if we wanted to add a crop, then we will be able to do that. One of the key things here though is, see this edit cultivable area? Let's say if that was only 80%, so we've got some headlands which we can't get to, or a bit of steep hill, then it's important that we update that, because the remaining 20% of grass that you don't turn over or put into crop, that will retain its current contamination levels. So yes, that is now put into crop. If we go down the bottom, you'll see that Repo 7 is now in crop and has got null days. The other one, which is slightly different, is silage. So let's say we are going to put silage off that. Again, let's say it's 100% in this one, and it was done today. Mark this as cut for silage, confirm. That will just reduce some of the contamination in that paddock. So that is basically the bread and butter of it. Going forward, you'll then be able to do things like look at your mob history. You'll be able to see the colours that they were at the time. You'll be able to see what the fecal egg counts or when they were drenched, so that you'll be able to really track what's happened, what grazing decisions you made, and what that impact has had on your worm burden and resistance risk. And you can also do that at the paddock level. So let's say we want to look at this one. You can see what mobs grazed when, if it went into silage, etc. So they are the key things. One final thing is the overview page, where we've got things like the highest worm burden risk, highest resistance risk, both at a paddock and a mob level, and so you can just kind of get an overview of how your farm's tracking. So we will do this again and add some more, but in the meantime, if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll get the Play app to you as soon as possible. Thanks.